Welcome to Hearts and Minds, a podcast that will help you to discover the extraordinary in your everyday life. Whether it's in your work, relationships, or your spiritual life, we discuss topics of faith and life in a way to suit the unspiritual and devout alike. Wherever you are on your journey, this podcast should speak to you, and we are very happy that you are here. This is Maura Cassidy, and I am here today with Chiara Degenfeld, who spoke previously for us before on our Hearts and Minds Guest podcast. You're very welcome back, Chiara.
Thank you very much.
So today we are going to talk about engagement, embracing the journey and making the most of your engagement to grow as a couple. So, Chiara, could you tell us, maybe as a start off, what is engagement and what's the purpose of engagement? Because I think sometimes, it's a big party, but people just think it's just like telling everybody to put the date in the diary.
Which is part of it.
Which is part of it. Yeah, there's a lot of practical things. Or it's just getting all the practicalities for the big day, already started. It's a lead up to all the preparations. So what is the real purpose of engagement? As a recently married couple yourself, you've been married for over a year now. So you have a little bit of perspective on it.
So I think what I mostly can share is what engagement meant to us. We were engaged for about 11 months. And for us, engagement was really this moment where we already said yes to each other. We knew we were going to choose for one another and still wanted to prepare. But there was already really this form of commitment, knowing together we want to, step into the boat of marriage. And so for us, it was such a beautiful period because we weren't married yet, but we knew we were going to go there. And also when we got engaged, on purpose, we said the first 3 months, we're not going to think of any marriage preparations. Because, before you know it, it's just a time where you're just doing practical planning. But actually to sink in, what does it mean that I want to, for us in 11 months then, want to say yes for the rest of my life to this person. And it's really a time you already have commitment to one another in a certain way, but there's also still freedom of like when one finds out it's not the right person to each go the other direction. But for me, I think for us, it was really, we know what we want. And now there's more this safety of just fully going for it and getting to know one another and talking through all the difficult and beautiful things.
Super. And can I ask, just apropos of that, you mentioned to see if it was a deal breaker. Was there any point in your engagement you thought this might be a deal breaker?
No.
Okay.
No, it's really funny actually from the moment, but I mean, we see that just as a big gift. From the moment we started dating, we both knew and we both never doubted.
Wow, that's very special.
Yeah. But I know people who broke off their engagement, which is nothing wrong, so to say.
Yeah, but no, a sign that you've done a good engagement, I would think.
Yeah.
Because you've managed to talk through things and work through things. From your perspective, how can and I know you've spoken to your husband about this, how can a couple, a man and woman, build a strong foundation for their marriage during engagement?
First of all, communication. And that's what everyone also told us. Like, the best foundation for a marriage is to learn how to communicate well. And communicate about everything. And even people told us, like, even if you're scared to say something, just say it. Just even blurt it out, because you need to learn what's going on in the other, in yourself. If he says or does something, or he doesn't say or doesn't do something, what does he do to me? You just don't know, and you need to find out all those things. So I think, first of all, communicate a lot, and rather tell the other a bit too much than not enough, so to say. And
can I ask, just on that point about communication, people communicate in very different ways. Is it worth discovering your fiancé's communication style?
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. It was really funny. We followed a pre-marriage course. It's really worth it. It's done by an organization, and you can actually do it anywhere in the world because you get the videos online, etc. And there, one of them was on communication and the different styles of communication, and then both finding out, okay, what's my style of communication? What's my family style of communication? And it helped us so much to understand the other person better, to understand both of the families better. So it's worth it.
And can I ask what is the name of that course? We'll share all your resources at the end of the podcast, but what's the name of that course?
It's a pre-marriage course from Alpha.
Oh, Alpha. Very good.
And it's really cool because they make you go through very practical things. You watch videos of a couple who give some examples, and then every time there's like a talking time, so you get 10 minutes, and then together you have to talk about a subject, which is many subjects. It's indeed communication, it's family life, it's what you're used to, it's finances, it's intimate life, it's what do you expect of the other to do in the house chores. It's many things. And it's actually a lot of fun because I think it's subjects you don't really think of talking about, like what do you actually expect the other to do in the house? Little things like that.
No, very interesting. And it's little things that are important. You know, in that sort of, pre-marriage phase, and you've mentioned, there's sort of practical things sometimes that we sometimes don't talk about, or we maybe over talk about. There are many other aspects, obviously. There's a spiritual, emotional, and as you say, practical side. How can you balance, those aspects and ensure that you get the right, you might say, they get the right attention, really?
Yeah. We also had a preparation series because we're both Catholic, and it was from a priest. It was really cool because he would give some sessions also with other couples online on what is marriage, like the spirituality of it and the meaning. And then we would have one-on-one time with him, like the couple and him. And he would just ask many questions, and it would help us to start talking about different things. And there I would really advise to get someone or some course or whatever, or a book, which just helps you to go through things. And most good books or good courses will cover, the emotional part, the practical part, the spiritual part. That really helped us. And we've both been lucky to just have good examples of family members, of marriage, of friends, and we would also talk to them and ask them for advice. And so
wonderful.
Really ask the people around you for advice.
And I like, just as you're saying, sorry to cut you there, but it's lovely that balance that you obviously had as a couple. On the one hand, you had the Alpha course, which I understand is also for people who are Christian and non-Christian. And that's often the case in a couple. One may be Christian or Catholic and the other may not, or both may not be practicing their faith at a particular time. So that's actually lovely. And it's lovely the way your own experience of it was so fun. It wasn't serious, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and there's going to be so many problems, and you need to be like Superwoman or Superman to get through it. But also that idea of having a spiritual guide, because of course in the Catholic tradition and in the Christian tradition, marriage is a sacrament. So it's like three to get married, as it were. That spiritual space is a very powerful space and a beautiful space. How can couples, on the one hand, foster that deep emotional connection, which of course is very powerful, because you're no longer, two individuals, but you formed a union, without crossing that space, that physical intimacy space, and that's quite challenging.
It is a challenge, and for anyone. For us, it was also a challenge. I think what helped us was to both be very clear what do we expect of this time, what means marriage for us, and what is the place of intimacy, of the physical intimacy in that. And so for us, it was very clear, we only want to really come together once we're married, because for us that really means so much. It's really what the sacrament means. It's this union. Where you say, I'm fully yours and you're fully mine. That's what you say in the vows. And that's when you come together, is what you say with your body. And if one both has that clear, then when you would come before that together, actually you're lying, because with my body I say I'm fully yours, but I'm actually not fully yours, because we're not married yet, and we didn't say to one another, I will be forever faithful to you, etc. And so I think first, would we want to wait in a certain way, yes or no, and why? I think mostly the why. Doesn't mean it's easy. For us, there were moments where we had to say, okay, I need to leave this room now, bye. And we just had very clear boundaries. We would never sit on one another's bed together, just because then it becomes too difficult. Always leave the clothes on, like little things like that. But is that because the rules of the rules? No, because we wanted to respect one another, and also, and that's what I wish this for everyone. I, as a woman, I felt so much loved by him, by now my husband and then my fiancé, because, I mean, yes, for a woman it's hard to wait for the physical intimacy, but for a man often it's much harder. But he showed to me so much love by saying, no, I'm waiting for her, and I'm now practicing to grow in my love by being creative in love, because it's not that you can't love one another when you can't physically love one another. There's so many other ways. And it's also preparation for marriage, because you both have different love languages. So for one, maybe the physical aspect is a love language. For another, it's something totally different. But if you don't, if you're only focused on the physical aspect, but you don't learn to also be creative and love the other in other ways, at some point you're thinking, I love you because of my physical thing, but the other one doesn't receive it because my love language is presence, or, so you really learn to become creative in love, which you will need in your marriage. And in your marriage, there will also be times you need to abstain because of different reasons. It can be health. It can be, once there are children, you probably just don't have all the time. It's so many different reasons. And this for us was just a time where we could already lay that foundation of what is waiting, what does it mean, and mostly how the waiting can help us actually at the end to grow in love and to feel more loved. And I wish, it's not easy, but I do wish it for everyone. And also in that, because it's not easy, and because it's not normal in our society, and I see that, and people around me were also wondering, why are you not living together? But then it helped me to surround myself with friends who would support me, and who would say, it's beautiful what you do, and that's really helpful. To support yourselves with friends, even good podcasts or books which help you in that can help.
That's very helpful, as you say. And the online space, couples doing their marriage preparation on Zoom means that you can meet more couples who are...
It was cool. We were on Zoom with, I think, 20 couples from literally all over Europe.
Wow, that's really special. That's really nice, because sometimes you can feel very on your own, because the typical question, people say, so why aren't you living together? And so it's to find creative ways around that. Can you share with us some of the creative things that you and your husband did, to express your love for each other?
Oh, yes. So I would drive by car to my work in the early morning, and we did live, that was really also a big gift. So I was already living in where I lived, and my husband had to move from abroad. He wanted to live closer by, so that it was easier to just see one another. And then we found something 2 blocks away for him. And I had to leave at 6:30 in the morning for work. And then either he would come down and then stand at my car to wave me goodbye, but then secretly do sticky notes inside or outside of my cars with little messages. Or if he wouldn't be there, I would find little sticky notes on my outside mirror and things like that. Even at some point I found a whole, so I love notes. That's my love language, letters. I found a whole pile of notes for, I think, every hour of the day I could change
Wow.
to the next. Yeah. I mean, I have to admit now I receive less notes than then, but I mean, that's okay. Now we live together, so it's different. I think also surprising the other in different ways. So it can be very small, by all of a sudden holding the hand of the other person, or for me during a busy work day, texting him, just saying, "Hey, I think of you," or taking the other out as a surprise to. I remember we went to the cinema, or it doesn't need to be very complicated. Or I know certain things he likes to eat, so I try to every now and then cook something nice for him, or can be very small things.
But real. And definitely, as you say, the person's love language. What are some of the key conversations, that couples you think should have during their marriage? Can you remember some really important conversations that you had, rather during your engagement, that you can still remember and think, God, that's why engagement's important? Or, and it doesn't always have to be something negative, I would imagine.
No. So we love to talk about our future dreams, our dreams for family life, or what does a marriage look like? What do we imagine? Talking about children, is the other open to children? Are you together open for a family? What does it look like? What would you find important in education? What would you find important in work for together? So I think really to together start dreaming about your common life together, which includes your marriage, your children, your work, your family, etc. And in there, because that was always advice to me when I asked, before we knew each other, I always had the question, but how do you know it's the one? And then people would tell me, you just know it. And I was like, sure, but how? But it's true, you just know it. And how is because you discover you look with the same eyes at the world. Doesn't mean you have the same opinion on everything. We don't. So we like to have different opinions, but you have for many things you don't need words. You look with the same eyes. And through having those conversations, you can discover, do we look with the same eyes at the world? Are we, and through that you can start more and more, coming together with your common vision, your common thoughts, hopes. Finances was that was touched on in the pre-marriage course, and it was really good to just start talking about it. What do finances mean? How was it in your own family? Did you ever have a lack of money? Did your family throw with money? Like very different things on finances. So that's really worth it to talk on, like, what are you used to? What are your expectations? Also, of your common income. What we found very important and what helped us obviously was, and that was also through this pre-marriage course, it really helped us to talk about intimacy, and really openly about all forms of intimacy. What are you maybe afraid of? What does it mean to you? What have you been hurt in the past or not? Do you have any sexual addictions like pornography? And to talk about those things, I think it's especially most important that before marriage, especially hurt wounds are at least being touched upon. Obviously not fully healed, but it's much harder if one finds out once you're married that the other, whatever, has huge sexual wounds or has a huge sexual addiction. That's very hard because you quickly feel betrayed because the other one has been hiding this for you. And it's scary, but it's so beautiful if you can, from the beginning, openly talk about it. And we are so grateful, and that we've really been helped through this course, and also this priest who helped us, who encouraged us to just very openly talk about it, even if it's difficult. But that helps us now in moments of difficulty or pain to really just say it immediately out loud.
And of course, as you say, when you talk about things openly, and you get perspective and you can get healing, and at least you know where you stand together as a couple.
Yeah,
that's very helpful.
And it's not always easy, but
no, I can imagine.
It's worth it. And then what helped for me was I had one good other friend to whom I could talk about certain things. So that I would also advise that you seek out good friends with whom you can also talk. That you don't, and keep
so
it all for
you think
yourself.
it's good to have. Would you think it's good to have, that sort of mentoring from somebody, or obviously, and
for sure. And I would really advise also a couple.
Okay.
A couple you look up to, where you think they have a beautiful marriage. They've been married for, I don't know, 10, 20, 50 years. And there are many couples who are so willing to openly share.
It's lovely to see that, the generosity of people and wanting to pass on their things they've learned, or their experience, or what they might have thought was a deal breaker isn't a deal breaker, or what's, because sometimes, as you say, it's balanced. It's difficult to balance the sort of practical side of things with the real sense of marriage. Because also when we're fearful, we tend to focus on things we've control over or can do something about, Ring the photographer is supposed to talk about that topic that you're not even sure if you have the answer to. And you're hoping it'll go away once you have received the sacrament of marriage, which of course isn't the case, because, we're human beings. We need to process things humanly as well. Let's talk a little bit about preparing for the sacrament of marriage, because that's, of course, what you and your husband chose as a great, I suppose, blessing, not just a blessing, but a strength and a vision of your marriage beyond wedding planning as such. And what's the difference? What's the difference between wedding planning and preparing for the sacrament of marriage?
It's a good question. It was for us a constant trying to find the balance. Wedding planning is very practical indeed. Ring the photographer, asking this person, going there, doing this. Whereas a spiritual preparation is going deeper together in what does marriage actually mean? What's the deeper meaning of it? And for us as Catholics, that was like the meaning is in a certain way defined, but you have to dig deeper. You have to find out what does it mean? What does it mean that, okay, marriage is supposed, like the love between a man and a woman is supposed to reflect the love of God for us. What does that mean? What on earth, even in our daily lives, what does that look like? And so for us, different things. One was that we had a weekly date night, and that was really advised by different people to also do it into your marriage, one night per week, where you have a date night together. And we said on our date night, we don't talk about practical wedding planning, which was so good, because otherwise you so quickly get into it again. And there we would either just talk about life in general, or sometimes we would really say, hey, what are we actually going to start? What is this whole sacrament of marriage? What does it mean? And then obviously this course with this priest helped us a lot. And we read a little booklet. I will share the booklet with you. It's very small, very simple, and very deep. What does marriage mean? It actually means helping the other one to get to God, to come closer to God. And so in our daily lives, it actually means helping the other to be happy. And I remember also in this pre-marriage Alpha course, where then it said, try to ask your partner each day, also once you're into your marriage, how can I make your day better? Whoa. But yeah, so beautiful. It deepens everything, and you realize, okay, that wedding day is great, but it's just the beginning of all that is gonna come. And so it's good to sometimes draw yourself out of this practical planning. And my husband was really good at that. For the planning of the wedding, we did it together with my parents. So my father was the wedding planner, so to say. And my husband really said, because for us, what is it about? It's about this sacrament of marriage and what it means. Let us really focus on the Holy Mass, what it is, what it means, and to make that the most beautiful. And the rest, it will all be fine and it will be great and organized. But if we focus on the Mass, then that will help us also most to prepare well. And it was really cool because I am a planner, so I go into all the details and the practical things, and he could often put me back on, but what is it about? Is that then important? Okay, actually not so.
And also there's a lot of pressure too on couples to do things a certain way, and it's become quite commercial, wedding planning. So naturally, in a sense, to have the marriage that you have described or the wedding you've described, you need to make a decision. You're not going to do this, and you're not going to do that, and you're not going to worry about the other. In fact,
I think we're both also not super sensitive to what other people think or expect. Or me, maybe probably less than my husband. He's a bit more sensitive to those things. But then constantly to go back but what is most important? What
is your big memory of your wedding? Is there any things that stand out for you?
Yeah, the joy of the whole day. It was such an incredible, joyful day. I very clearly, it was a very special day because one of my sisters gave birth to her first baby on our wedding day. And so in the morning, at 7 a.m, she called us and she said, I just gave birth.
Wow.
So that was very special too. I know it made it an extra big feast day, of course. And I very vividly remember the Mass. It was so joyful. We had a big choir with friends and family. And we had chosen a lot of joyful music. And I remember just constantly, celebrating that from then on he was my husband, and together celebrating life, and to do that together with all of your family and friends. That's very special.
Very special. Definitely a reason to be joyful. Looking at the other sacraments, you mentioned Mass was the high point for your wedding, confession and the Eucharist. What role did those sacraments play in your spiritual preparation for marriage? And did they help you to stay focused on what, on that spiritual growth that you both wanted and looked for?
Yeah, definitely. Mass helped in different ways. First of all, because what is Mass? It's Jesus showing his love to us by offering himself, which is exactly what we're meant to do in marriage, is us offering ourselves to the other and showing our love. And so that became really concrete through going to Mass and just, experiencing this living example. But also just the very fact that during Mass, you stop and you have a reflection moment. And so a reflection moment of okay, what's life about? What is the most important? That really helped both of us as well. And again, also confession. In confession, what is it? We go to Jesus and we say, oh Lord, I'm so sorry. Because why do we do that? Because we want to be in this loving relationship with him again. And we both experienced that actually in two ways. Because we would go to confession, it helped us to also to one another say sorry. And because we said more sorry to one another, it helped us in confession. It really went two ways. And I've really I think through confession learned to also go to my husband and ask him for forgiveness. And then from there we got to accustomed to regularly. We try to do it once per week, and sometimes it's every day, sometimes it's once per 4 weeks, to ask one another for forgiveness, and to ask, is there somewhere where I've hurt you? And that the other one can say it, and then you ask for forgiveness, or, hey, I'm sorry where I hurt you in this or that way. And what for me really helped me, because there were moments where it was really tough and I had a hard time like forgiving him. But then I realized, but wait, when I go to confession, Jesus immediately forgives me. He's not harsh on me. He doesn't say, well, this is a bit too difficult for me or too big. And that really helped me, because I had experienced this forgiveness of Jesus. It helped me in me forgiving him. Like, who am I to not forgive him? If Jesus forgives me and him, then who am I? So yeah, definitely helped.
And also, it's a nice reminder, just how you've described it there, Chiara, that maybe it's because we need to love in another person, love them more than they love themselves. You know, I think that's also a lovely idea, that idea of asking somebody, have I hurt you in any way? Because, of course, we're not the other person, you know, even if you're living with them. So how you perceive things, how you feel, how you respond is also quite different.
And it's hard. It's hard to ask that question, because you know that something will come and but it's good. It's really good at the end.
Super. Well, look, I think we're going to end there, Chiara, on that. Thank you so much for sharing those very interesting insights for our listeners on engagement. And I think listening to you, you realize how rich that period of engagement is. And you've certainly, I'm sure, given many couples, you know, that sort of confidence in themselves to choose, to cherish those moments, and to choose the type of engagement that they want, as opposed to, you know, the type of engagement that they feel pressurized to live, or just to be ready. It's you know, it's a very special time for a very good reason.
And so, really make it a fun time also.
Oh, good. Okay.
Like, do fun things together. Spend a lot of time together. We went on tons of picnics together. That's really
super. Okay, well, that's a final one, actually, because life, you know, it's love, so it should be fun. It should be It should be full of joy and laughter. In fact, I love when I see a couple together and I see them just bent over laughing. I just think that for me says that's working. You know what I mean? And that sort of belly laugh. Well, look, I just want to thank our listeners for listening to our conversation today, and just to ask you as listeners to keep sending us through your comments and suggestions for any future topics you'd like us to cover in our podcast. Thank you. And thank you, Chiara, for joining us as always.